There's a certain kind of car that doesn't just take you somewhere, it brings you back. Back to a time when driving meant feeling the road, hearing the engine sing its little song, and appreciating the simple joy of movement. And if you know anything about quirky, lovable machines with more character than horsepower, you already know the kind of car I'm talking about. The Citroën 2CV, especially the ones that found their way to the United States during the early and mid-1980s, is one of those cars that sticks with you. Even if you never owned one, you remember seeing one puttering along the street, its suspension bobbing like it was floating through life, its little air-cooled engine buzzing with the determination of a French bumblebee. You remember thinking, what on earth is that thing? And then maybe, I kind of want one. Now, the American spec 2CV from around 1985 was a curious creature. Not many made it here, and the ones that did had to jump through all the strange hoops our regulations demanded. A bit of extra lighting here, a few reflectors there, slightly different emissions equipment, all strapped onto a design that at its heart hadn't changed much since the late 1940s. It was a car with the soul of a farm tool and the personality of an old friend. If you've ever driven one, you know exactly what I mean. Picture this. You open the feather-light door, it feels almost like opening the lid of a biscuit tin, and you slide onto a seat that hugs you like an old hammock. No complicated electronics, no screens shouting at you, no rows of buttons you'll never use, just fabric seats, a big steering wheel mounted almost horizontally, and a speedometer that doesn't pretend you'll be going very fast. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Turn the key, and that tiny two-cylinder engine coughs to life. It doesn't roar, it clears its throat, politely, like a gentleman preparing to speak. The whole car trembles for a moment, then settles into that familiar rhythmic clatter. If you're the kind of man who misses the sound of a machine actually running instead of humming softly like some kind of electric kitchen appliance, this is music. And once you get moving, the experience becomes something truly special. The 2CV doesn't try to impress you with speed. It doesn't pretend to be a sports car or a luxury sedan or anything other than what it is. Honest transportation, built with the heart of an engineer who wanted farmers to be able to cross muddy fields without breaking a dozen eggs in the back seat. Literally, that was part of the original design brief. So the suspension does this incredible thing. It rises, it dips, it leans, and yet somehow it soaks up every bump like you're riding on a magic carpet. You don't brace for potholes. You don't wince when the road gets rough. The car gently nods as if to say, I've got it, don't worry. And the gear shift, the gear shift. If you've never used the 2CV's long umbrella handle shifter that pokes straight out of the dashboard, you're missing out. It feels like operating a piece of old farm machinery or adjusting the arm of a vintage phonograph. There's a pleasure in it that modern cars just don't have. Each shift clicks into place with a kind of mechanical sincerity, like the car is thanking you for taking the time to do things properly. Now, the funny thing is, even though the 2CV never had much power, the 85 American spec version feels surprisingly willing. That little engine is like a loyal dog, eager, cheerful, and always ready to go for a drive. You won't beat anyone off the line, but that's not the point. With a 2CV, the journey is the point. You drive with the windows open, your elbow hanging out, listening to the wind hum through the canvas roof. You wave at other drivers because people can't help but smile when they see this car. No one is threatened by a 2CV. They're charmed by it. And maybe that's why older men appreciate this car so much. It reminds you of a time when vehicles had personality, when driving was a craft, when you didn't need 400 horsepower to feel connected to the road, when you could fix half the engine with a screwdriver, a wrench, and enough patience, when mechanics talked to you instead of computers. The American 85 model wasn't the fastest, or the most powerful, or the most advanced, but it was genuine, it was honest. And in a world full of plastic and digital distractions, that kind of honesty feels rare. Back then, people used to say the 2CV was slow. But let me ask you, what were we rushing towards anyway? Wasn't life a little sweeter when you could take your time, when arriving 5 minutes early didn't matter as much as enjoying the scenery along the way? The 2CV encouraged you to slow down, breathe, and notice things. The smell of the autumn leaves, the sound of gravel crunching under the tires, the warmth of the sun through that rollback canvas roof. Driving one wasn't just transportation, it was therapy. The funny part is, these cars were stubborn in the best possible way. They outlived trends, they refused to die, and they earned a kind of respect that horsepower alone can't buy. A well-kept 1985 model can still hum along on today's roads, keeping pace with traffic, shrugging off rough patches, and turning heads every mile. And the men who appreciate them, the men who remember carburetors and toolboxes and the smell of warm oil, can't help but smile when they hear that familiar engine note. Because the 2CV didn't just carry people, it carried memories, family vacations,